In the small, isolated town of Ravenswood, nestled deep within the Arizona desert, life moved at a different pace. The heat of the sun beat down on the dusty streets, and the residents lived their lives in quiet solitude. But the peace was often interrupted by the whispers of an old legend that haunted the town, a legend of the midnight echo. It was said that on the night of a full moon, at the stroke of midnight, the echo would awaken. A voice would call out, luring those who heard it into the desert, where they would vanish without a trace. The legend had been passed down through generations, but no one had seen the echo in decades. Most dismissed it as just a tale to scare children, but for those who had heard the whispers, the fear was very real. Evelyn Harper had grown up in Ravenswood, raised on stories of the echo. As a child, she had been terrified of the dark, often staying awake at night, straining to hear any unusual sounds. But as she grew older, she dismissed the stories as just that, stories. Now in her late 20s, Evelyn had returned to Ravenswood after several years in the city, seeking solace after the sudden death of her mother. Her mother's death had been unexpected, and the circumstances surrounding it were strange. Evelyn had found her one morning, lying in bed, her eyes wide open in terror. There were no signs of struggle, no indication of foul play, just a look of pure horror on her face. The doctors could not explain it, attributing her death to natural causes, but Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She decided to stay in her childhood home for a while, hoping to find some sense of closure. The house was old and creaked with every gust of wind, but it was filled with memories of happier times. As she settled back into her routine, she found herself drawn to her mother's old journals, which were tucked away in a dusty box in the attic. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant mountains, Evelyn sat in her mother's room, reading through the journals. The entries were filled with mundane details of everyday life, shopping lists, notes about the weather, and letters to old friends. But as she flipped through the pages, she found a passage that made her pause. March 13th, 1997. The echo is real. I heard it again last night. It called to me from the desert, just like it did when I was a child. I'm so scared, but I can't tell anyone. They'll think I'm crazy. But I know what I heard. Evelyn's heart raced as she read the words. Her mother had never mentioned the echo to her before. She quickly turned to the next entry, desperate to learn more. March 14th, 1997. I couldn't sleep again. The voice is getting louder, more insistent. I don't know how much longer I can resist it. I have to find out what it wants, but I'm so afraid of what I'll find. Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine. Her mother had heard the echo, the very thing she had dismissed as a myth. She wondered why her mother had never told her about it. The journal entries continued, but they became more erratic, with her mother's handwriting growing increasingly frantic. March 20th, 1997. I saw it. In the desert. It was waiting for me. The echo is not just a voice, it's something much worse. I can't describe it. I can't even think about it without feeling like I'm losing my mind. I need to leave Ravenswood, but it's too late. It's too late for all of us. The final entry was dated the day before her mother's death. April 5th, 1997. I'm sorry, Evelyn. I'm so sorry. I should have told you the truth, but I was too scared. Now it's coming for me. I can hear it, even when I'm awake. Don't come back here, Evelyn. Leave Ravenswood and never look back. The echo knows your name. Evelyn dropped the journal, her hands trembling. She stared at the walls of her mother's room, feeling as though they were closing in on her. The words echoed in her mind, the echo knows your name. What did that mean? How could a legend know anything about her? Determined to find answers, Evelyn decided to speak with the only person who might know more about the echo, Martha Wilkins, an elderly woman who had lived in Ravenswood her entire life. Martha was known as the town historian a keeper of secrets and stories that most had long forgotten. The next morning, Evelyn made her way to Martha's house, a quaint cottage on the outskirts of town. Martha welcomed her with a warm smile, but her eyes betrayed a deep sadness. "I was wondering when you'd come to see me," Martha said as she poured them both a cup of tea. "I knew your mother well, Evelyn. She was a good woman, but she carried a heavy burden." Evelyn hesitated before speaking. "Martha, I found my mother's journals. She wrote about the echo, about hearing it and seeing something in the desert. I need to know what she meant." Martha sighed heavily, setting down her teacup. "The echo is not just a story, dear. It's a curse that has haunted this town for generations. No one knows where it came from or why it calls to certain people. But those who hear it are never the same. Some disappear into the desert, others, well, you've seen what it did to your mother." "What is it?" Evelyn asked, her voice trembling. "Why does it target people?" "No one knows for sure," Martha replied, her voice grave. "Some say it's the spirit of someone who died in the desert, lost and angry. Others believe it's something much older, something that was here long before this town was built. Whatever it is, it feeds on fear. It lures its victims into the desert, and they are never seen again." Evelyn felt a cold sweat on her skin. "Is there any way to stop it?" Martha shook her head slowly. "I wish I could tell you there was. But once the echo chooses you, there's no escape. It's relentless. It won't stop until it gets what it wants." Evelyn sat in silence, absorbing the weight of Martha's words. She couldn't believe what she was hearing, but at the same time, she knew it was the truth. The fear in her mother's final journal entries, the terror on her face when she died, it all pointed to something real, something malevolent. "I'm sorry, Evelyn," Martha said softly. "I wish I could do more to help you. But you should leave Ravenswood, just as your mother wanted. It's the only way to stay safe." But Evelyn couldn't leave. Not now. Not without understanding what had happened to her mother, and perhaps to find a way to end the curse once and for all. That night, as the full moon rose high in the sky, Evelyn made a decision. She would confront the echo, no matter the cost. She drove out into the desert, the vast emptiness stretching out before her. The moonlight bathed the landscape in an eerie, silver glow, casting long shadows across the sand. The wind whispered through the dry brush, carrying with it a faint, almost imperceptible sound. Evelyn parked the car and stepped out, feeling the weight of the silence pressing down on her. She stood still, listening, her heart pounding in her chest. For a moment she thought she had imagined it. But then she heard it soft at first, then growing louder. "Evelyn." The voice was distant, yet unmistakable. It echoed through the night, calling her name with an almost hypnotic rhythm. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. She knew she should run, get back in the car and drive as far away as possible. But something held her in place, something deep and primal. "Evelyn, come to me." The voice was closer now, and Evelyn felt her feet moving on their own, carrying her deeper into the desert. The ground beneath her seemed to pulse with energy, drawing her toward an unseen destination. She wanted to resist, but the pull was too strong, the compulsion too overwhelming. After what felt like hours, she reached a clearing in the desert, a place where the sand was smooth and untouched. In the center of the clearing stood a figure, shrouded in shadow. It was tall, its form indistinct in the moonlight, but Evelyn could see its eyes glowing, piercing eyes that seemed to see right through her. "Who are you?" Evelyn whispered, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond, but the air around it vibrated with a low, ominous hum. As Evelyn stared, she felt a wave of fear wash over her, but with it came a strange sense of recognition. She knew this place. She had been here before in her dreams, in the stories her mother had told her as a child. The figure began to move toward her, and Evelyn's fear turned to panic. But before she could react, the ground beneath her feet gave way, and she was plunged into darkness. When she opened her eyes, she was no longer in the desert. She was in a place that defied logic, a vast, endless void filled with swirling shadows and faint whispers. The figure was there, standing over her, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Why, Evelyn gasped, struggling to comprehend. What was happening? Why are you doing this? The figure finally spoke, its voice echoing in her mind like the toll of a distant bell. I am the echo. I am the memory of all that has been lost in this desert. I am the voice of those who were forgotten, those who wandered into the night and never returned. Evelyn trembled as the echo continued. Your mother heard my call, just as you have. She tried to resist, but in the end she was consumed by her fear. She became a part of me, just as you will. No, Evelyn whispered, tears streaming down her face. I won't let you take me. I won't become like them. The echo's eyes flared with a cold, cruel light. You have no choice. The fear you carry, the grief, the loss, it all feeds me. It gives me power. You cannot escape it, just as you cannot escape me. Evelyn felt the darkness closing in around her, the shadows reaching out to claim her. But in that moment, she thought of her mother, of the fear she had lived with, the terror that had ultimately claimed her life. And something inside Evelyn snapped. No, she screamed, pushing back against the void. I will not let you take me. I will not let you win. The shadows recoiled, as if startled by her defiance. The echo seemed to waver, its form flickering like a dying flame. Evelyn could feel its grip loosening, the pull of the darkness weakening. She focused all her will, all her strength, on that single thought: she would not let the echo take her. With a final surge of energy, Evelyn broke free from the void, the darkness shattering around her like glass. She gasped for air as she found herself back in the desert, the moon shining down on her like a beacon of hope. The echo was gone, its voice silenced, its presence banished. Evelyn collapsed to the ground, exhausted but alive. She had faced the echo and survived. She had broken the curse that had haunted her family for generations. And as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, she knew that she was finally free. She returned to Ravenswood, leaving behind the memories of that night in the desert. The town slowly faded into the background of her life, a place she would never return to. But the legend of the Midnight Echo lived on, whispered among the townsfolk in hushed tones. For Evelyn, the desert would always hold a dark secret, one that she had faced and conquered. And though the echo was gone, its memory would linger, a reminder of the shadows that lurked just beyond the light.